All right, welcome. We know you guys are so excited to talk through the epigenetic data on our Serenity Sleep System with Dr. O and Dr. Stevens. Just a quick reminder, our Serenity Sleep System includes 3 amazing products. It includes our phenomenal Serenity Essential Oil Blend, our Sleep Stick, our Serenity Sleep Stick, and our Serenity Soft Gels. Nicole, take it away.
Okay, brief recap. We saw this at convention, so we're going to talk about it just a little bit. How did we set up the trial? Right, we were looking at the whole Serenity kit, but we wanted to understand pieces of it. We had our people start by using the aromatic, they added on the topical stick, and then we kind of focused at the end on the whole system. So that's really what we wanted to see. How does this affect their sleep, their quality of life, a few things like that. So what did we see? Another recap from convention. We're looking at how better sleep just improves the quality of life altogether. Now on this graph, you're going to see some that go up after people use Serenity Sleep System. That's good. You know, things like general health, they feel well for social activities, they have peace and calm. You're going to see some things that went down. Also good. Things like discomfort and nervousness and sadness. So as you're looking at that graph, just make sure that you're being able to understand what those numbers are doing. Now this one, even more straightforward, right? Daily life just got easier when people use the Serenity system in the study. Things like recalling information, doing housework, being prepared with their daily activities. Everything was just fantastic. Now these were surveys, subjective surveys that our people were telling us what they were perceiving. So that's good, that's important. And then we started getting into some objective measures. And this is where we started to get even more excited.
Do you remember when we saw this data?
Oh my goodness.
We were pretty excited when we saw this data.
Dr. O called me, he's like, Christmas has come. We were so excited. This is where we saw inflammatory markers in the blood reducing as people were using the Serenity Sleep System.
So instead of just subjective data, we were seeing objective data or objective measures that would come down when people got more or better restorative sleep.
Right. And you see 2 groups here, irregular sleepers and regular sleepers. So we were actually able to separate our people into groups that we could then analyze separately because we saw that people sometimes had very unpredictable patterns of sleep.
And CRP stands for C-reactive protein. It's a protein that's made in the liver that has a relatively short half-life, meaning that once it's produced, it can go away relatively quickly. And we can measure the amount of CRP in your body. And what you see on these graphs is that with the Serenity Sleep System, levels dropped for both our irregular and our regular sleepers.
Everybody, yeah.
So what was the thing they had in common?
So
The Serenity Sleep System.
yeah,
That's correct.
Right? Great information.
Whether you have a really chaotic sleep pattern and you're going to bed at all hours of the night and waking up at crazy times, or whether you're regular, you get the effect, but the difference is by having that healthy lifestyle, you're helping yourself along. You're getting the better result. So let's keep going.
So the next thing we looked at in the trial was epigenetic data. And we've talked a lot about it. We're going to remind you of what we shared back in September before we get into epigenetic clocks. We looked at every single gene in the human body. And each one of these dots on this screen, we call it a volcano plot, is a single human gene. There are about 20,000 of them. And if you click again, we measured with both the green and the red genes that were turned up or turned down more than 5-fold using epigenetic measurements. And we only shared with you 3 of them.
Right.
And you'll remember these from convention. DNM, T3B, LRP5, and ZIMZ2. I know it's alphabet soup. And guys, you do not need to remember the alphabet soup of these gene names. It doesn't matter. What you need to remember is that the Serenity Sleep System, when used as directed, supports healthy sleep and circadian rhythms. It improves your sleep, glucose metabolism, and cellular fitness. It regulates sleep, your immunity, and your inflammatory response. Those are the claims associated with these epigenetic markers or genes. Now, we actually wanted to show you the claims on the left were the claims that were made prior to the Serenity Sleep System's trial about Serenity. When we uplifted the Serenity formula and created the stick and the whole system, we studied it and are now able to give you these claims that are much more declarative, positive and affirming about our Serenity Sleep System.
Right, that's empowering right there, right? Hopefully that's exciting for you.
Especially those of you who are out educating, to go from may to declarative supports. That just makes a big difference as you're educating.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the Serenity Sleep System and epigenetics for a second and what it allows us to do. So when we looked at all those genes in the human body, there were those genes that were turned up over fivefold, and we shared with you 3 of them. There were actually 96. But we can actually look at biological age using epigenetic markers. Biological age is different than chronological age. I'm not going to tell them my age. My chronological age is X, but if I use Serenity Sleep System, my biological age can be decreased. And we're going to show you how epigenetic clocks work to show us at the genetic level how old we are or how young we are based on the lifestyle changes we make. Now, I want to make something very clear. Too often, we hear in general conversation that our genes control who we are. And they do have an impact, but they are not the only thing. The lifestyle choices that we make in our life influence the way that our genes are expressed. We have to remember that. And that's why our chronological age can be different or higher than our biological age if we make wise and good choices around our health and wellness.
So we're not a slave to our genetics.
We're
So
not.
every time in our mind when we're like, oh, but it runs in the family, my mom, my grandma, this is your opportunity to kind of put a scratch in that cycle and say,
Yeah.
I'm going to choose differently.
Yeah, there are things that are definitely genetic things that run in families, but you have influence over them. They are not the only thing, and we're going to talk about that today.
You've heard of nature and nurture, right?
Yes,
This is the
exactly.
nurture part. So we're going to talk about this in terms of these epigenetic clocks. Now, the ones on the left-hand side, these are whole system clocks. We're looking at how all the epigenetics are working together as an entire body system. But did you know that we actually have individual system clocks too? So we can look at how the epigenetics are with blood age and brain age and immune age. And we're going to go through data now that's going to show you each of these individual things. It's mind-blowing. We're so excited.
We are a little bit excited about this.
A little
aren't
bit. Can you tell these are our excited faces?
It's been a lot of fun. So let's talk about epigenetics a little bit through the lens of something that I hope is familiar to most. When I was a kid, my mom made me take piano lessons. And I'm imagining that, okay, we kind of all have probably done that. I had to take piano lessons for years, and I'm grateful, very grateful that I did. But it allows me to use this analogy to teach a little bit about epigenetics. Epigenetics is like piano playing. The keys are our genes. On a piano, there are 88 keys. In the body, there are 20,000 genes. The keys and the genes are like the same thing in this analogy. The piano player is epigenetics. The piano player gets to actually decide what type of music to play, how soft or loud to play, whether it's going to be rock and roll or whether it's going to be smooth jazz, whether it's going to be classical, happy, or sad. The piano player is in control of how the keys or music is played. Epigenetics is the piano player. It sits above the piano and dictates what type of music is going to be played. Like I said earlier, your choices influence the type of music you're playing at a genetic level.
Isn't that amazing? And you can use that analogy too. It's very easy to explain. We hope you do. That's an amazing analogy.
Thanks.
Okay, now down on the cellular level, what is actually happening? How are those keys being played? So this is accomplished through something called methyl tags, right? Methylation. That's why we call this methylation analysis. So I want you to think of your DNA kind of like a giant zipper, right? Imagine that it's twisted up like the DNA is. But we're going to unzip that zipper every time we need to express a gene. Because what happens is the machinery of the cell slides up and down that zipper and translates those genes, right? Now, if you've ever had this experience of zipping a zipper and you get stuck on a piece of clothes or something, right? And the zipper can't go and you can't zip your zipper all the way up. This is what happens when you put a methyl tag on the DNA and the machinery hits up against it, it's done. It cannot translate that gene. So we're able to have genes dialed up, dialed down by having those methylation tags against which that machinery has to stop because it can't translate anymore. So this is how we talk about our DNA methylation. This is how we talk about the epigenetics being dialed up, dialed down, and it's, it's very complex on the chemical level, but simple when you think about it like that.
Yeah, kind of one of the ways I like to think about it is when the DNA has the methyl groups on it, the gene is basically turned off. And when those methyl groups are removed, the gene can now be transcribed, read, and turned into protein, and a cellular function takes place in the body as a result.
Right.
So methylation is the window through which we're looking at our epigenetic clocks.
Right. And there are other things involved in that too, but this is kind of the heart of it, the foundation of it.
So what are epigenetic clocks? So epigenetic clocks are looking at patterns of genetic methylation within the body, and looking at that pattern gives us a time. So for instance, you can look at a human being's chronological age, what they say on their birth certificate, and then look at their biological age by looking at the pattern of methylation within their cells. And there are many different epigenetic clocks. We're going to talk about 10 of them today, and each of them plays a different role or looks at our epigenetic age or our biological age through a slightly different lens. And we'll explain each one of them as we kind of go along. But it's this measurement that allows us to tell the difference between chronological and biological age. If you think about movies that you've seen where the White House displays all the different time zones and there's a clock for every time zone, that's kind of like epigenetic clocks. And when we make good choices, when we use the Serenity Sleep System, it's like we're taking the hands of that clock and moving them backwards. And we do that through different body systems and different genes. Each one of these clocks that we're going to talk about today is a different set of genes or a different lens that we're looking at biological age through.
Controlled by the epigenetics that we just explained. So hopefully this is all making sense and coming together for you.
So here comes the data. So I know that these kind of graphs are a little bit intimidating to look at. We're going to walk you through a couple, but fear not, they're not that complex. So on the left-hand side here, you see regular sleepers, and on the right-hand side, you see irregular sleepers. The green bar is time 0 when they began the study, their baseline, and the orange bars are the group's time point 2 or end of the study. And we measured the methylation patterns on all of their genes at time point 1 and time point 2. And then we divided them into regular and irregular sleepers. Also on the graph, this is the most important number, is the number right in the middle of the screen of each of those sections. There's a 0.018 and a 0.01. Those are the p-values that describe the statistical difference between time point 1 and time point 2. Anything below 0.05 is statistically significant and allows us to make a claim about our system because it is moving the needle statistically significantly with our epigenetic clocks. This clock is the Horvath 2 clock, and it's based on genes specific to both skin and blood. It shows, on the next slide, something that might be a little more impactful or easy to understand. So don't worry, I don't need you to memorize that first picture. I just wanted
to do if you'd like to.
Yeah,
That'd be
please.
amazing.
We'd love you if you did. But that first slide is really showing you, we're showing it to you so that we are being scientifically very transparent with you. This slide is an interpretive slide of that data. And what it shows is that regular sleepers saw a 388% decrease in their biological age on the Horvath 2 clock. And our irregular sleepers were also statistically significantly changed, down 168%.
Okay, can we, real quick, can we clarify
sure.
the difference between a regular and an irregular sleeper one more time?
Okay. Yeah. So regular sleepers are those sleepers that, I don't want to be that didn't lie to us, okay? So we asked everybody to come into the trial who got regular sleep, and they got 7 to 8 hours of sleep every night. What it turned out is that about half of our sleepers did not get regular sleep. They slept all over the place.
But they thought they did.
They
genuinely thought this was good sleep.
They thought they did. We'd never call anybody a liar, but they were literally not sleeping anywhere near regular. Some of them were looking like they worked swing shifts and were sleeping 2 hours a night or 6 hours a night one night, or in the middle of the day and then in the middle of the night. They were all over the place. Our regular sleepers were the sleepers who basically went to bed around 10 to 12 and then woke up around 7 to 8. And those sleepers, because they were choosing to do something that was in tune with their biological clocks, their circadian rhythms, they were actually getting better benefits than those who were irregular sleepers. So if you live a doTERRA wellness lifestyle, you get more benefit from the Serenity Sleep System than if you don't. But the good news is that even if you don't make all the right choices in your life, because who does, right? You still get benefit.
But it's one of the things you could do right now. While you're waiting for the soft gels to come back in stock, you could work on your sleep routine. You can work on getting that regular bedtime, regular time that we wake up in the morning, and cut back on the screens before bed, or the spicy food, or the heavy foods before we go to sleep, or taking your phone into bed with you, or any of those things that cause disruptive sleep.
All of them are not so awesome. But so what does this mean? So what does this mean to a typical 40-year-old chronologically aged woman? It means that for the Horvath 2 clock, the data that we just presented, in 6 weeks, we took 6 months off of their biological clock. They were 6/10 of a year younger just by using the Serenity Sleep System.
I love this because I just picture myself like sneaking into a room where my clock's up on the wall and being like, oh, got some extra time here.
Yeah. Talk about a return on investment here. I mean, that's amazing.
So let's do the next clock.
Okay. So remember what Dr. O was just explaining. We're looking at the same kinds of data, and we'll look at them throughout the rest of our clocks, but we're comparing our regular and irregular sleepers from baseline, their initial measurement, to the endpoint. And the number that you want to watch, that one right in the middle of those 2 boxes, all right? That's the p-value, statistical significance. That's where we really have the confidence to say, yes, this wasn't just noise in the background of our genetic information. So the Hannum clock is another one of these full system body clocks where we're looking to see what happened using the Serenity system. And again, we saw an amazing change. Regular and irregular sleepers actually both saw some benefit, but take a look at the difference here.
This is incredible.
Right?
This is awesome.
A 941.67% change in the regular sleepers. And, I'm so sorry, my hair keeps getting in the way.
Oh, your hair? I'm so sorry.
Look at him. 941.67% change for the regular sleepers, 202% change in the irregular sleepers. I mean,
really quite
amazing for both
incredible,
of them. And translating that into 0.7 of a year taken off of our biological age in just that 6 weeks.
When Nicole and I saw this data, we were
It took me a minute.
stoked.
Like, I wasn't even sure if we were seeing what we were seeing. We were so...
Yeah. We actually had to call our scientific partners who do the DNA methylation work and say,
Are you sure?
Can you check that again?
Are you sure?
And they were like looking at us on this Zoom call that we were having with them going, so what's in this product? Because you're like changing
twice.
10 clocks. That's incredible. They said, like, if you change 1 clock, it's a meaningful scientific experiment.
Yeah.
You guys changed 10 clocks.
They were wowed.
They were pretty impressed.
Yeah, we made them check it several times.
Yeah,
So it was
pretty
really
fun.
exciting.
Let's keep going. Okay, next clock. The next clock is the pheno-age clock. So this is looking at a phenotypic age score that looks at 11 different proteins throughout the body known to be associated with age. And when you look at that clock again, look at those 2 numbers in the middle. Both of these numbers were statistically significant. And what does it mean? Next slide. It means that it drops 376% for regular sleepers, 355% for irregular sleepers. This change was seen in just 6 weeks again. And what did it do for them? It ended up saving over 2 years. I mean, we're looking at 0.7 years in let's see, I can't remember exactly the number of years there. but we're looking at 1.1 year difference taken off of your chronological age by using the Serenity Sleep System for 6 weeks.
So you can lie on your driver's license, or you can get some good sleep. I mean,
Lie on your driver's license.
No, I would like to have my biological age on my driver's license. It would feel better as
Right?
I pulled it out.
Yeah.
Yes.
let's do that.
I think it's just important to put some of this into context, maybe, and I think that's what you guys are doing, which I like.
Yeah.
Let's keep going. Okay, is this mine? Grim Age. So Grim Age is an amazing clock as well. It focuses on our chronological age, and it takes into account our gender and multiple different biomarkers that are associated with kidney function, mitochondria function, and inflammatory response. And this is the first time where we saw discordance, or where we saw regular sleepers get a benefit and irregular sleepers don't get a benefit. So in the Grim Age clock, you've got to be living a doTERRA lifestyle to gain this benefit. And if you look at that number, it is astounding. That p-value is so low. There was a 338.1% change, and the p-value leaves no doubt that the Serenity Sleep System was what caused our Grim Age clocks to be turned backward.
Right. Multiple body systems. I mean, this is how everything is getting involved, and the lifestyle is really shining through.
Yep. And that ended up being turned back, again, almost a full year. 7/10 of a year were taken off of our biological clocks in the Grim Age clock for our regular sleepers. Okay,
Amazing.
next clock.
All right, ohmic age. This is a big one. You're going to see this one in the literature too. If you're curious, you should go look up some other things that show this clock changing. This is a very popular one these days, very trendy. But there's a reason for that, because it's looking at proteomic, clinical, and metabolic features. So it's taking into account a lot of things, not just the epigenetic methylation pattern, which is what we love. We love it when things correlate like this. In the case of the Serenity Sleep System, right, regular and irregular sleepers, but only the regular sleepers got that statistically significant benefit again. So we're talking about how lifestyle comes together with the Serenity Sleep System to really give you the benefit. And what a benefit, right? 547% change in using the sleep system over 6 weeks. What does that translate to? We're talking half of a year in your life that you've added to your biological age, I guess taken away from your biological age, right? Changed it. And it's just, I don't know, this was one of our mind-blowing, another one of our mind-blowing moments was to realize that these clocks that are being used in other research were influencing them.
Okay, we told you we were going to show you 10 biological clocks. We're going to keep going.
Here we go.
But that was the last of the full body clocks, right? Now we're going to do systems.
Right.
But you impacted all of the full body systems.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. The data, we could spend a long time talking to you about why it's important, but just that point that Lauren just made is an important one to call out. And the Hannum, Horvath, Ohmic, Grimm, all of those clocks, when they get turned back when one gets turned back, it's important. When they are all turned back, it's ironclad.
Yeah.
It's just a really important finding that all of the general or more super level clocks are turned back, all of them showing a decrease, is way more important than just one of them.
And it goes back to that volcano plot graph.
Yes.
You guys could have pulled data from anywhere. You could have decided we're going to go from
genes.
all of the genes, but you only took the top, and then consistent results every single thing that they're checking. Yeah.
Actually, that's a really important point. We couldn't show you all 96 genes. It's an avalanche of data. But those 96 genes that were affected turned up or down more than 5-fold. That's what's resulting in these biological age clocks being turned backwards. Okay, let's talk about systems clock. So the first one we're going to talk about is the blood system, or the system that looks at all of the factors or genetic contributions to our age within our blood. And look at the p-values again. Again, this is a regular sleeper benefit, not an irregular sleeper benefit. That number is less than 0.05 for our regular sleepers and is above 0.05 for our irregular sleepers. And because it's less than 0.05 for our regular sleepers, it means that this data is rock solid. And we saw a 106% decrease in our regular sleepers in their blood age clock. And what does that translate to? It translates to their biological age decreasing by 0.7 of a year. What you're going to see on the right-hand side of this screen now is how each system's clock is going to move to the left of that line, showing that decrease down. Okay, let's keep going.
How about the brain, right? We want to make sure our brains aren't aging beyond our bodies. This one was maybe my favorite, potentially my favorite.
I think it's the most important one because of the nature of what we're looking at being sleep.
Right, right. We know what affects brain. You feel it. But now we have some data to show you that is going to just blow your mind. Blow your mind.
You're killing me, Spence.
We're looking now at how the brain clock is affected by the Serenity Sleep System. So take a look. The regular sleepers, the irregular sleepers, both of them statistically significant effect. But again, we're going to show you that you're going to get the additional benefit by having those lifestyle pieces. And I'm sorry, I have a hard time even talking about this. I'm so excited. 251% change in that blood age clock. And actually, in this case, the irregular sleepers, maybe they needed a little bit more benefit.
Yeah, they did.
They actually got a 264% change in their brain age clock. So take a look at this. What does that translate to?
So their biological age went down by 7 and 5 3/4 years, respectively.
7 years. In 6 weeks of this healthier sleep using the Serenity Sleep System, 7 years, the equivalent younger on their brain clock.
So just to pause, we understand, I think, why that is. Every day as we go throughout our lives, our brains are building up toxic metabolites just through the very act of doing the things that our neurons need to do.
Yeah, glucose metabolism. The brain is the biggest consumer, right? All those waste products are coming out every day.
And as a result, at the end of the day, when we're sleeping, our brain has the ability to regenerate or restore by getting rid of all of those toxic metabolites through its normal systems. But it can only do that when it's getting restorative sleep. So when we get better restorative sleep, we see this massive benefit. And the reason why Nicole and I think this is so important is because it's that 7-year difference that is measured because you're getting your brain to rest. And that 7 years is something that at my age I would really like to have.
I think all of us would.
So good sleep means your brain gets to run the dishwasher cycle at nighttime while
That's
you're
exactly
sleeping.
right.
And if you skip the sleep, no one hits the start on the dishwasher.
Or like the garbage trucks in your city. Imagine if they could only collect a little bit of the garbage and everyone else in the city just got to have their cans be overflowing all the time. It builds up, it creates some problems, and we see that, we feel that.
We do. So, the next systems clock we want to talk about is the inflammatory response. Remember how we talked about CRP? Yes. So the inflammatory response also went down for both irregular and regular sleepers. And that inflammatory response was statistically significant, that number in the middle. Both groups saw a benefit from this system. Their ages went down 3 years and almost 2.5 years respectively. If we look at a percent change, we're talking about 251 for regular or 210 for our irregular sleepers, our poor souls who can't seem to,
Come on,
get the
guys,
sleep
you
that
can
they
do
need.
it.
And like you mentioned earlier, this isn't a whole systems clock, but when we look at inflammatory markers, it impacts everything.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that clock again went down. Our inflammatory response went down. And when we think about why, we actually have a correlative biological marker to this epigenetic clock in our CRP system. When we measured the CRP of our regular versus irregular sleepers, they both saw that CRP number or that inflammatory marker come down. And that inflammatory marker coming down is what leads to this number coming down as well.
And that's why we're so excited, right? We're seeing everywhere we look and from every direction that we're looking at these scientific results. They're correlating, they're aligning, they're matching up with what we're seeing in the other types of results that we're collecting. So the more that we look at this, the more we just think this is groundbreaking, something that's never been done before. Immunity, right? Tied very closely to our inflammatory response, really big player in how our bodies age. So looking at these tissue types, we're trying to understand between our regular and irregular sleepers, again, looking at that, check out the p-values.
Again, only our regular
Only our
sleepers.
regular sleepers, right? We are just so excited to finally be able to show what we've been saying for years, that the lifestyle is so important with how our bodies function.
There's actually a ton of, do you mind if I?
No, please.
There's actually a ton of data showing that our immune systems are strengthened through restorative sleep. There's a great deal of data. And we actually can, because of this data, make an immunity claim on the Serenity Sleep System. Our immunity age is decreased. Our immunity is stronger through that process of getting restorative sleep.
That's huge. The world needs that. Right? In this case, 465% change. I mean, that's just a beautiful graph right there. And what does that translate to? We're looking at a biological clock difference on that
3
immunity.
years.
Yeah, more than 3 years. In this case, it's almost 4 years that we've had that clock just be strengthened. Our biological age has been impacted.
That's
So
awesome.
amazing.
Okay, so now if we look at the epigenetic systems clocks, we use this metabolic age clock, one of my favorites, to look at our metabolic age. And we use genes involved in metabolism tested directly from the blood to look at the epigenetic methylation patterns on metabolic genes. And both groups, regular and irregular sleepers, saw statistically significant benefit. And that benefit was quite remarkable. 249% change and 248% change for regular and irregular sleepers. And that led to essentially the clock turning backward up to 3 to 4 years for that group. Just a tremendous change.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at these patterns of what body systems are being affected and how profoundly they're being affected, it's hard to overstate just how important sleep is and what a fantastic support the Serenity Sleep System is to that healthy sleep.
Agreed.
Okay, so Nicole, all of this beautiful data, do you get to present it to anybody outside of doTERRA?
Funny you should ask. Actually, we're very excited because as we're seeing this data come in, we're thinking this is bigger even than the essential oil community. This is going to make ripples in the scientific community at large.
Yeah.
So we are actually headed, Dr. O and I are headed to the International Conference on the Science of Botanicals at the University of Mississippi next month in about 2 weeks. We're going to be presenting this data in front of many of our peers from around the world. And I got to tell you, we've been to that conference a few years in the past. Every year, people are just stunned by the kind of research we're doing, by the findings that we're having. And so we anticipate this is just going to top all of that.
Well, we're not stunned. I'm not stunned because Nicole and her team has done a tremendous job. She's just been dogged in her pursuit of excellence as we do clinical research at doTERRA. This is, in my opinion, this data that we've presented to you today, this is the most important data that doTERRA has ever created and the most impactful. And it's just the beginning. We have so many trials in the pipeline that we're working on that Nicole and her team are running, so much so that we almost couldn't find time to do this because she's pouring through data and enrolling so many people into different studies. I can't thank you enough for everything that you're doing. It's amazing.
Okay, so since we had to make a slightly sad announcement at the very beginning about being out of the Serenity soft gels, we want to end this webinar with some really cool information. So what you got to see right now was just part one of the research. Would you like an opportunity to be part of part two?
Hopefully, yes, because we are very excited to be announcing to you, at least teasing to you, what we hope to be able to do and cover in our next leader call, which is next month. We would love you to be involved in helping us expand this body of research. Right? Is that something hopefully you're excited about?
Wildly expand.
Wildly expand, maybe 100-fold, 1,000-fold. That's our goal anyway. We would love it if you, your family, your teams could do some of the same things that we did in this clinical study in your home, right? With your teams together as a challenge. We're hoping, and we're putting together right now, the assets that you would need to run your own study with some of these very same things.
With your own teams, your own family members, just yourself.
Yeah. The idea is we want to see what this does on a broad scale. We want to see how do these data play out in a population, right? We had a sample, and sample is typically what you have for a study. Now, what happens when we expand that? Can we get 40,000 people using the Serenity Sleep System and sharing their data back with us? If you do choose to participate, we will have all the instructions for you. And we invite you, please, if you're willing, let us see your data, because we would love for you to be involved in the expansion of this study.
All right, so definitely going to join us for our leadership calls in April. We're going to make sure you have everything you need to be able to share what you learned today. We're going to make sure this recording is available before then, so you can watch it and rewatch it and rewatch it again and learn it. But your class materials will all be updated, and Nicole has made available everything that they used to be able to be turned into something that you can use for supporting and educating your teams and including them in this very important research.
Perfect. Great to be with you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.